She moved through the world as if listening to a song no one else could hear. It wasn't a sound that reached the ears, but a vibration felt deep within the bones, a silent hum of creation that orchestrated the rhythm of her breath, the grace in her step, and the profound stillness in her gaze. He, like so many others, was a man deafened by the relentless noise of a world that demanded he prove, conquer, and achieve. His life was a cacophony of deadlines, expectations, and the hollow echo of his own unmet desires. He saw her, but he didn't truly see her. Not at first. To him, she was a quiet landscape, a peaceful anomaly in his world of structured chaos. He mistook her silence for passivity, her gentleness for weakness, and her stillness for an absence of ambition. What he couldn't comprehend was that her silence was not empty. It was a vessel, filled to the brim with a power so ancient and so potent it could unravel the very fabric of his reality. Her stillness wasn't inaction. It was a deep, resonant listening to the soul of the world. And her gentleness was the fiercely protective embrace of a woman who had walked through her own inner fires and emerged not hardened but softened into an unshakable strength. She wasn't trying to change him. She wasn't trying to teach him, guide him, or fix him. She was simply being. And in her being, in the untamed wilderness of her authentic presence, she was creating a space. A sacred, terrifying, and utterly irresistible space into which his masculine soul, weary from its endless battle, would finally be invited to surrender, to awaken, and to remember the king it had forgotten it was. This is not a story about seduction. It is a story about soul recognition. It is the story of how the awakened feminine, in her profound and articulate silence, becomes the key that unlocks the dormant power of the divine masculine, not through words of persuasion, but through the undeniable transmission of her own awakened energy. Her name was Ilara, and she worked with clay. Her studio was a small, sun-drenched room at the back of her house, a space that smelled of damp earth, sweet incense, and the faint metallic tang of minerals. To watch her at the wheel was to witness a form of prayer. Her hands, coated in a fine gray dust, didn't just shape the clay, they listened to it. There was a conversation happening, a silent dialogue between her spirit and the spirit of the earth held within the spinning mound. She moved with a focused reverence, her body a seamless extension of the creative force flowing through her. This was her sanctuary, the place where the noise of the world fell away and the frequency of her own soul became clear. Outside this room, Ilara navigated a world that often felt foreign to her. She was gentle, observant, and moved at a pace that seemed out of sync with the frantic rhythm of modern life. She held a quiet confidence, not in what she did, but in who she was. This wasn't an arrogance born of ego, but a deep, cellular knowing that came from years of dedicated inner work. She had journeyed into the shadowed landscapes of her own heart, faced the ghosts of her past, and learned to alchemize her pain into presence. She had cultivated an inner landscape of such richness and peace that she no longer needed the outer world to validate her existence. This self-sourcing nature was a mystery to most. Men were drawn to her, to the oasis of calm she seemed to represent, yet they often didn't know how to approach it. They would bring her their achievements, their plans, their carefully constructed identities, laying them at their feet like offerings. They spoke in loud voices, filled the space with their energy, and unconsciously sought to pull her into their world of noise and striving. Ilara would listen with a genuine, compassionate presence. She would see beyond the facade, beyond the armor of the ego, and glimpse the flicker of the soul within them. But she would not be moved from her own center. She would not abandon the quiet temple of her being to meet them in the marketplace of their ambition. She held her energetic ground, not as a fortress, but as a lighthouse. Her silence was not a rejection, but an invitation. It was a question, unspoken yet deeply felt. Who are you behind the noise? Who are you when you stop performing? Into this world walked Julian. He was a man sculpted by the pressures of his environment, An architect at a prestigious firm, his life was a testament to linear thinking, hard edges, and the relentless pursuit of external validation. He was successful, respected, and deeply, profoundly exhausted. His mind was a constant buzz of calculations, projections, and a low-grade anxiety that he mistook for ambition. He had mastered the art of doing, but had forgotten the art of being. He met Alara at a small gallery opening where a few of her ceramic pieces were on display. He was there out of a sense of obligation, another networking event to be endured. He moved through the crowded room with practiced ease, his smile a well-honed tool, his conversations efficient and strategic. And then he saw her. She wasn't holding court or demanding attention. She was standing by one of her own creations, a large, earth-toned vessel that seemed to hold the stillness of a desert night. Her presence was a pool of silence in the chattering room. He watched as people approached her, saw their animated gestures and loud talk, and noticed how she absorbed it all with an unnerving calm. She didn't shrink, nor did she push back. She was simply there, an anchor in the swirling tide of social energy. Julian felt an unfamiliar pull, a confusing mix of curiosity and intimidation. He was used to women who were either overtly impressed by his status or who challenged it with a competitive fire. Alara did neither. When he finally approached her, he found himself at a loss for his usual script. He began to speak about the vessel, using his architect's vocabulary to describe its form, its structural integrity, its aesthetic appeal. He was trying to impress her, to connect with her through the language he understood best, analysis and intellect. Alara listened, her eyes holding his with a soft, unwavering focus. When he finished, she didn't praise his insight or engage in a technical discussion. She simply smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips, and said, "How does it make you feel?" The question caught him off guard. Feel? He hadn't considered that. He was trained to think, to evaluate, to critique. The realm of feeling was a territory he rarely visited, and certainly not one he discussed with strangers. He faltered, searching for an intelligent-sounding answer. "It has a certain gravitas," he managed, the word feeling clumsy and inadequate. She just nodded, her silence holding a space for him to go deeper if he chose. But he couldn't. The door to that inner world was rusted shut. He felt a wave of frustration, a sense of being seen in a way that was both unnerving and deeply intriguing. He had come to conquer, to impress, to add another contact to his network. He left feeling as though he had been gently, silently, and utterly disarmed. He didn't get her number. He didn't need to. Her silence had planted a seed in the barren soil of his soul, and it had already begun to grow. The encounter lingered with Julian long after he left the gallery. It was like a piece of a song stuck in his head, a subtle, persistent hum beneath the usual static of his thoughts. He found himself thinking about her at odd moments, during a high-stakes client meeting, while reviewing blueprints in the sterile quiet of his minimalist apartment. It wasn't a romantic obsession in the typical sense. It was something more profound, more unsettling. Her question, "How does it make you feel?" echoed in the chambers of his mind. He started to notice the profound lack of feeling in his own life. His days were structured around function, efficiency, and the accumulation of success. His relationships were transactional. His home was a showroom. He had built a life that was visually perfect but emotionally sterile. He had engineered a world devoid of the very thing her presence had momentarily awakened in him, a connection to something deeper, something real. He found the gallery's website and looked up her name, Alara. Even her name felt like a quiet exhalation. He saw more of her work online. Each piece, from a simple cup to a towering sculptural form, seemed imbued with a life of its own. They were not just objects, they were presences. They were earthy, imperfect, and radiated a sense of grounded authenticity that his own architectural creations, with their clean lines and cold materials, sorely lacked. He felt a growing, inexplicable need to be near that energy again. It wasn't about possessing her or even understanding her. It was about standing near her fire, hoping some of its warmth might thaw the ice that had formed around his own heart. This is the first powerful transmission of the awakened feminine, her energetic signature. Before a word is spoken, her state of being communicates everything. A woman who has cultivated a deep inner peace, who has healed her own wounds and trusts in the flow of her life, radiates an energy that is both calming and deeply activating to the masculine. It is an energy that says, "You are safe here. You do not have to perform. You can lay down your sword." For a man like Julian, constantly armored and on guard, this silent invitation is revolutionary. It bypasses his intellect and speaks directly to his soul's longing for rest, for sanctuary. He found a pretext to visit her studio. A friend of a friend was interested in commissioning a piece, a convenient fiction that gave him a reason to cross her threshold. He called, and her voice on the phone was exactly as he had imagined, calm, unhurried, present. She agreed to a meeting without any of the usual social maneuvering or games. When he arrived, she opened the door with a smudge of clay on her cheek, wearing simple, comfortable clothes. There was no artifice, no performance. She led him through her home to the studio, and as he stepped into the room, he felt it again, that profound sense of peace. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and the quiet hum of creative energy. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, golden sprites. He had been in hundreds of pristine, architecturally significant spaces, but none had ever felt as alive as this simple, messy room. He launched into his rehearsed story about the commission, but his words felt hollow and out of place. Alara listened patiently, her hands gently working a piece of clay on a nearby table. She wasn't multitasking. Her attention was fully on him, yet her connection to her art remained unbroken. It was as if she could be in two worlds at once, the outer world of their conversation and the inner world of her creation. It was in this moment that he experienced the second principle of silent awakening, the power of undivided presence. In a world of distraction where everyone is half listening, half scrolling, half somewhere else, the gift of a woman's full, embodied presence is a force of nature. It is a powerful mirror. When a woman is fully present, she is not judging, analyzing, or trying to fix the man in front of her. She is simply witnessing him. This witnessing creates a powerful, energetic field where the man's own masks and pretenses begin to feel heavy and unnecessary. In her unwavering gaze, he is not seeing a reflection of his success or his failures. He is seeing an invitation to meet himself. Julian found his carefully constructed sentences trailing off. He was used to being the one in control of the conversation, the one directing the flow. But in her quiet, receptive presence, his usual tactics were useless. He felt an uncomfortable vulnerability creeping in. He felt the scene. Not for the architect he was, but for the man he was underneath, the man he himself had long since forgotten. He finally abandoned the pretense of the commission. "I lied," he said, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. "I'm not here for a friend. I was at the gallery. I saw your work. I saw you, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, about you." He expected a reaction, surprise, annoyance, perhaps even flattery. Alara showed none of these. She simply stopped her hands and looked at him, her gaze clear and compassionate. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a quiet understanding. "Why do you think that is?" she asked softly. Again she turned it back to him. She didn't absorb his confession into her own ego. She didn't make it about her. She held up the mirror once more, gently forcing him to look at his own motivations, his own longing. This is the art of sacred neutrality. The conscious woman does not take on a man's emotional projections. She does not get inflated by his praise or wounded by his criticism. She understands that his reactions to her are almost always a reflection of his own inner state. By remaining neutral, she creates a safe space for him to explore that state without fear of entanglement or agenda. She is not a prize to be won or a problem to be solved. She is a sovereign being, and her energy offers him the chance to remember his own sovereignty. Julian was floored by her response. He had no answer. He had been operating on a subconscious impulse, a magnetic pull he couldn't name. Her question forced him to try. He stammered, "I don't know, my life. It's all straight lines, buildings, plans, schedules, your work. It's different, it's alive, it feels real." He had never admitted this to anyone, least of all himself. The confession hung in the sunlit air between them, raw and honest. Alara didn't rush to fill the silence. She let his words breathe. She let him sit with the weight of his own revelation. This is another crucial element, the comfort with silence. In the masculine world, silence is often a void to be filled, a sign of awkwardness or a breakdown in communication. In the feminine realm, silence is fertile ground. It is the space where truth can surface, where insight can blossom. A woman who is comfortable with silence gives a man the rare and precious gift of being able to hear his own inner voice, often for the first time. In that shared silence, something shifted in Julian. The frantic buzz in his mind quieted for a moment. He wasn't the successful architect or the charming conversationalist. He was just a man, sitting in a quiet room with a woman who saw him, truly saw him, and wasn't asking him to be anything other than what he was. He felt a profound sense of relief, followed by a terrifying wave of grief for the years he had spent disconnected from this part of himself. Their interactions continued in this way for weeks. He would find reasons to visit the studio, at first with flimsy excuses, and later with a simple, honest desire to be in her presence. He never asked her on a traditional date. The dynamic between them was not about conventional romance. It was something deeper, a form of soul mentorship that was never explicitly defined. He would watch her work, sometimes for hours, without saying a word. He learned the language of her craft, the way she could sense an air bubble in the clay with a gentle touch, the way she breathed with the rhythm of the wheel. He saw how she surrendered to the material, allowing it to guide her as much as she guided it. It was a dance of yielding and leading, of strength and softness. Her process was a living metaphor for the divine feminine energy she embodied. One afternoon, he arrived to find her struggling with a large, ambitious piece. It was a towering form that kept collapsing on itself. He watched as she centered the clay again and again, her movements patient and focused despite her repeated failures. His architect's mind immediately went into problem-solving mode. "The base is too narrow," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet focus of the room. "The center of gravity is too high. You need to build a wider foundation if you want it to support that much weight." He was trying to help, to offer his expertise, to finally prove his value in a way he understood. Alara stopped the wheel. She turned to him, her face calm, but her eyes held a new intensity. "It's not a building, Julian," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "It's not a problem to be solved, it's a process. It will tell me what it needs when it's ready." Her words landed like a physical blow. He felt a hot flush of shame. He had taken his noisy, analytical, masculine energy and tried to impose it on her sacred, intuitive, feminine space. He had treated her creation as a flawed object to be fixed, rather than a living process to be witnessed and trusted. This is a critical lesson for the masculine to learn. The masculine impulse is to fix, to solve, to protect. These are beautiful, noble qualities when they come from an integrated place. But when they are driven by ego or a need to prove one's worth, they can become intrusive and disrespectful to the feminine process. The feminine realm is not linear. It is cyclical, intuitive, and often mysterious. It cannot be forced or engineered. The awakened masculine learns to hold space for this process, to offer his strength as a container, not as a tool of control. He learns to trust the wisdom of the feminine, even when he doesn't understand it. Julian apologized, his voice thick with a genuine remorse he hadn't felt in years. He saw in that moment how he had been doing this his whole life, trying to fix people, situations, even himself. He saw how his help was often a form of control, a way to make the world conform to his own rigid, logical framework. Alara simply nodded, accepting his apology without making him grovel. She turned back to the wheel and began again. But this time, Julian didn't just watch. He witnessed. He quieted his analytical mind and opened his heart. He felt her frustration, her patience, her unwavering connection to the clay. He stopped seeing a problem and started seeing a relationship. He was beginning to learn the language of energy, of intuition, of feeling. Weeks turned into months. The change in Julian was subtle at first, then profound. He started to loosen his grip on his life. He took a step back from a high-pressure project at work, delegating more and trusting his team. He began to spend time in nature, walking in the woods without a destination, simply observing the light filtering through the leaves. He started to notice the sterile emptiness of his own apartment and began to fill it with things that felt good, not just things that looked good. A worn leather armchair, a piece of driftwood, a small, imperfect pot he bought from Alara. He was, without realizing it, beginning to integrate his own dormant feminine energy. He was learning to value being overdoing, feeling over thinking, intuition over logic. This integration is the core of the awakening process. The conscious woman does not awaken the masculine by teaching him how to be a man. She awakens him by creating a space so safe and so resonant with feminine energy that his own suppressed feminine side feels safe enough to emerge. And it is only when a man has integrated his own inner feminine, his intuition, his creativity, his capacity for emotional depth, that his true, divine masculine can rise to its full potential. The divine masculine is not about brute force or domination. It is about presence, purpose, and integrity. It is a protective, providing, and deeply conscious energy. It is the sturdy riverbank that allows the wild, feminine river to flow. One evening, Julian arrived at the studio to find Alara sitting quietly in the near darkness, the room lit only by a single candle. The collapsed remnants of the large vessel were on a table beside her. He felt a pang of sympathy, assuming she was mourning her failed creation. He started to offer words of comfort, but she held up a hand to silence him. "Sit with me," she whispered. He sat on the floor opposite her, the silence of the room deepening as the city sounds faded outside. He noticed his own discomfort, his antsy desire to speak, to do something. But he remembered the lesson he had learned. He quieted his mind and simply sat with her in the darkness. He breathed with her, matching the slow, steady rhythm of her breath. He didn't know how long they sat there, minutes or hours. The candle flame danced, casting long shadows on the walls. In the stillness, a profound shift occurred within him. The last vestiges of his armor crumbled away. The constant need to perform, to prove, to be something other than what he was, simply dissolved. For the first time in his adult life, he felt completely, utterly present. He was not Julian the architect. He was not a man trying to win the affection of a woman. He was just a soul, sitting in the presence of another soul. And in that silent, shared presence, he felt an overwhelming wave of love. It was not a needy, grasping love. It was a vast, unconditional love that seemed to emanate from Alara, from the room, from the very core of his own being. He realized that this was what he had been searching for his entire life, in his career, in his fleeting relationships, in his pursuit of perfection. He had been searching for this feeling of profound, unconditional acceptance. He had been searching for home. Finally, Alara spoke, her voice like a soft bell in the quiet room. "The vessel didn't fail," she said. "It taught me what it needed. It needed to be broken. Its purpose was not to stand tall. Its purpose was to become something new." She gestured to the pile of broken clay. "Tomorrow I will take these pieces and I will mend them with gold. It's an old art form. The breaks are not hidden. They are illuminated. They become the most beautiful part of the piece. They tell the story of its journey." Julian listened, and he understood. He understood that she wasn't just talking about the clay. She was talking about him. She was talking about everyone. She was showing him the beauty in the brokenness, the strength in the surrender. She had not tried to fix his broken parts. She had held a space so loving and so safe that he could finally see the gold within his own wounds. This is the alchemy of conscious relationship. The awakened feminine does not run from a man's darkness or his wounds. She is not afraid of his anger, his grief, or his fear, because she has already met these energies within herself. She can sit with him in his metaphorical darkness because she is not afraid of the dark. Her unwavering presence becomes the fire that illuminates the path for him to heal himself. She doesn't do the work for him, but her light makes it possible for him to see the work that needs to be done. In that moment, Julian's heart broke open. Not with pain, but with a profound, liberating gratitude. He looked at Alara, truly seeing her for the first time. He saw the immense strength it took to be so soft. He saw the fierce courage it took to be so open. He saw the profound wisdom in her silence. She had awakened him without ever trying to. She had transformed him simply by being who she was. She had, without a single word of instruction, guided him back to the forgotten temple of his own heart. The divine masculine within him, dormant for so long, finally began to stir. It wasn't a roar. It was a quiet, steady hum, a deep, resonant knowing in his bones. It was the feeling of a king returning to his own throne. He was no longer a man seeking validation. He was a man ready to offer his presence, his purpose, and his protection from a place of deep, integrated wholeness. He didn't need to conquer the world anymore. He was ready to serve it. Their relationship did not magically transform into a conventional romance overnight. The journey of awakening is not a fairy tale with a simple, happily ever after. It is a continuous unfolding, a deepening into love and truth. What shifted was the energetic dynamic between them. Julian no longer came to her as a thirsty man seeking water. He came to her as a flowing river, ready to meet her ocean. He began to bring his awakened masculine presence to their connection. He offered her the gift of his unwavering support, not by trying to solve her problems, but by creating a container of safety and stability in which her feminine creative energy could flourish even more. He learned to listen not just to her words, but to the feelings and needs beneath them. He learned to anticipate and provide in a way that honored her sovereignty and her strength. He did not try to possess her or contain her wild spirit. He became the guardian of her sanctuary, the silent protector of her flame. He started his own creative projects, not from a place of ambition, but from a place of soul expression. He began designing community spaces, places of beauty and connection that nurtured the human spirit. He was using his masculine gifts of structure and logic, but now they were infused with the feminine qualities of intuition, empathy, and a deep reverence for life. He was no longer building monuments to his ego, he was building cradles for the community. The way a conscious woman awakens the masculine without a word is by first doing her own sacred work. She does not seek a man to complete her. She is already whole. She does not manipulate or use her feminine wiles to get what she wants. She communicates her desires with clarity and vulnerability from a place of deep self-worth. She does not chase. She attracts. She becomes a magnetic force, not by what she does, but by the frequency she holds. Her inner work creates a vibrational resonance that calls forth the highest potential in a man. It is a frequency that the unawakened masculine may not even recognize, but that the soul of a man who is ready to awaken will recognize instantly. It is the frequency of home. Think about the energy you bring into a room. Is it an energy of lack, of needing something from others? Or is it an energy of fullness, of overflowing with your own life force? Do you listen with an agenda, waiting for your turn to speak? Or do you listen with an open heart, offering the gift of your pure, undivided presence? Do you fear silence, rushing to fill every void with noise and chatter? Or do you embrace silence as a sacred space of connection and revelation? This is not about becoming a passive, silent woman. It is about cultivating a powerful inner stillness that becomes the source of your words and actions. It is about learning to communicate not just with your mouth, but with your entire being. Your posture, your gaze, your breath, the very energy field around you. These are all forms of communication, and they are often far more powerful than words. When a man feels this from you, when he feels that you are not trying to get anything from him, that you are not judging him, and that you are not afraid of his truth, a profound relaxation occurs within his nervous system. His armor begins to melt. The part of him that is weary from the constant battle of life feels seen and honored. This is the space in which his true masculine essence can emerge. It is an essence of deep presence, unwavering integrity, and a powerful, protective love. He stops trying to impress you and starts wanting to cherish you. He stops seeing you as an object to be conquered and starts seeing you as a sacred partner to be revered. He is not awakened by your beauty, your success, or your cleverness. He is awakened by the depth of your soul's presence. He is awakened by the silent song of your awakened heart. And in his awakening, you are mirrored, you are honored, and you are met in a way you may have only dreamed was possible. The journey begins and ends within you. Cultivate your own inner sanctuary. Heal your own heart. Learn to love and trust yourself so completely that you require nothing from anyone else. Become the woman whose silence speaks volumes, whose presence is a prayer, and whose love has the power to awaken kings. This is the path of the conscious woman. This is the quiet, revolutionary power of your divine feminine essence. It is the greatest gift you can offer to a man, to the world, and to yourself. The transformation in Julian continued to ripple outward, touching every aspect of his existence. He had spent his life constructing fortresses of glass and steel, yet it was the simple, earthy wisdom of a woman working with clay that had finally dismantled the fortress around his own heart. He learned from Alara the art of sacred purpose. Before, his purpose had been defined by external metrics, awards, income, recognition. Now, he understood that true purpose was an inside job. It was about aligning his daily actions with the deepest truth of his soul. He no longer asked, "What can I achieve?" He began to ask, "What can I offer? How can I serve life?" This shift from a mindset of extraction to a mindset of contribution is the hallmark of the awakened masculine. The unawakened, shadow masculine seeks to take, to control, to dominate. It is driven by a fear of scarcity and a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy. The awakened, divine masculine seeks to give, to support, to protect. It operates from a place of profound inner fullness, knowing that its strength and resources are not diminished by giving, but are in fact amplified. Alara never preached these concepts to him. She embodied them. He saw how she served the clay, how she served the creative impulse that moved through her. He saw how she served her own well-being with non-negotiable self-care, not from a place of selfishness, but from the understanding that she could not pour from an empty vessel. Her life was a living sermon on the power of devotion, devotion to her art, to her truth, and to the sacredness of the present moment. Her devotion gave her life a weight, a substance that his own ambition-fueled life had lacked. He realized that ambition chases while purpose attracts. Ambition is loud, purpose is quiet. Ambition is about the self, purpose is about the whole. One day he came to the studio and found her packing her pieces into crates. A gallery in another city had offered her a solo exhibition, a major step in her career. A younger Julian would have felt a surge of panic, a fear of loss. He would have seen her success as a threat to their connection, a step away from him. His mind would have raced with questions. What does this mean for us? Will you be leaving? How can I keep you close? But the man who stood before her now was different. He felt a clean, pure, and expansive joy for her. He saw this not as an ending, but as a beautiful new beginning. He saw her light, and his only desire was for the whole world to see it too. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. "How can I help?" This is the voice of the awakened masculine. It does not ask, What about me? It asks. How can I support you? It finds its joy not in possessing the feminine, but in creating a safe and supportive space for her to shine her brightest. His presence was a rock. He spent the next week helping her, his architect's mind now a tool of service. He designed and built custom crates that would protect her precious work. He handled the logistics, the phone calls, the tedious details that would have drained her creative energy. He did it all quietly, efficiently, and with a deep sense of reverence for what he was doing. He was not fixing her problems. He was offering his strength in service to her dream. He was being the riverbank, strong and steady, so her creative river could flow powerfully towards its new destination. He was, in the most practical and profound way, loving her. During this time, they spoke very little about the future, about what this change would mean for them. There was no need. Their connection was not built on a foundation of spoken promises or defined expectations. It was built on a foundation of shared presence, of mutual respect, of a deep soul recognition that transcended time and distance. The unawakened masculine, insecure in his worth, often seeks to cage the feminine. He mistakes attachment for love. He wants her to need him because it validates his own fragile ego. The awakened masculine understands that true love is about freedom. He loves her enough to let her go, to let her grow, even if it means his own life must change. His security does not come from her presence, but from his own deep connection to his inner source. He knows that if their souls are meant to journey together, they will, and no amount of distance can break that bond. The night before she left, they sat together in the now empty studio. The moonlight streamed through the window, painting silver rectangles on the dusty floor. The space felt different, pregnant with the energy of transition. It was not a sad emptiness, but a holy emptiness, the quiet pause between an out-breath and an in-breath. Julian reached into his bag and pulled out a small, velvet-wrapped object. He handed it to her. She unwrapped it to find a compass. But it was no ordinary compass. The casing was old and beautifully worn, but the face was new. In the center, where the needle should have been, was a tiny, perfectly formed piece of turquoise, the color of a robin's egg. The needle itself was a sliver of polished silver that seemed to float above it. "It doesn't point north," Julian said softly, his voice full of a quiet emotion. "It always points to the heart." He explained that he had designed it, worked with a jeweler to create it. It was a fusion of his old world and his new one, the precision of his architectural mind combined with the soulful artistry he had learned to embrace. "So you never forget the way home," he added. Alara looked at him, her eyes luminous in the moonlight. She did not cry. Her emotions were too deep for tears. In his gesture, she saw the culmination of his journey. He was no longer the man who spoke of lines and angles, but the man who could craft an object that spoke the language of the soul. He was not giving her a gift to bind her to him. He was giving her a gift that honored her own inner guidance, her own sacred journey. He was reflecting back to her the very lesson she had taught him, that the only true direction is the one that leads you deeper into your own heart. She didn't say thank you. The words would have been too small. Instead, she simply reached out and placed her hand over his heart. He placed his hand over hers. They sat there for a long time, their heartbeats sinking in the quiet room, two souls speaking in the silent, universal language of love. There were no promises of forever. There were no desperate declarations. There was only the profound, unshakable truth of the present moment, a moment of perfect connection, of perfect understanding. This is the intimacy of the awakened. It is not based on clinging, but on a deep, abiding trust. It is a connection that empowers, that liberates, that celebrates the individual soul's journey as much as the shared one. The conscious woman awakens the masculine not by making herself the center of his world, but by inspiring him to find the center of his own. She does not become his purpose. She inspires him to find his. She does not fill his emptiness. She inspires him to find his own inner fullness. This is a profound and often misunderstood paradox. In a culture that teaches women to be everything to a man, the greatest gift a conscious woman can give is to be so completely and unapologetically herself that she inspires him to do the same. Her silence is not a tactic. It is a state of being. It is the silence of the deep ocean, which does not need to roar to prove its power. It is the silence of the ancient forest, which holds the wisdom of centuries in its still, green depths. It is the silence of a soul at peace with itself, a peace that radiates outward and calms the storms in others. Are you willing to cultivate this kind of silence? Are you willing to do the deep inner work required to become a woman who is a sanctuary, not a battlefield? This requires you to face your own shadows, to heal your own attachment wounds, to let go of the need for external validation. It requires you to stop looking for a man to be your source and to become your own source. It is the journey from seeking love to being love. When you are being love, your very presence becomes a transmission. You don't have to say a word. The men who are meant for you, the men who are ready to awaken, will feel it. They will be drawn to the light of your authentic being, not because they want to possess it, but because it reminds them of the light within themselves. They will see in your stillness a reflection of the peace their own souls are yearning for. And in the sacred space of your silent, loving presence, they will finally feel safe enough to lay down their swords, to open their hearts, and to remember the noble, divine, and powerful men they were always born to be. The awakening of the masculine is not the woman's responsibility, but it is often her sacred honor to witness and to inspire. It happens not when she speaks, but when she finally learns to listen, to him, to herself, and to the deep, silent wisdom of the heart. The entire universe is held in that silence. A new world is born in it. The narrative of Alara and Julian is not just a story. It is a map. It is a map that charts the subtle, energetic dance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. It is a journey that many of you are on, or are yearning to begin. You may recognize yourself in Alara's quiet strength, in her commitment to her own inner world. Or you may recognize your own longing and frustration in Julian's initial state of disconnection, his soul-level exhaustion from living a life that was not his own. The key to understanding this awakening is to move beyond the language of words and into the language of energy. Every interaction, every moment of silence, every choice we make, carries a specific energetic frequency. The conscious woman's power lies in her mastery of her own frequency. She diligently cultivates an inner state of peace, wholeness, and self-love, and this state becomes her silent offering to the world. It is an energy that does not demand or grasp. It invites and allows. Let us explore this more deeply. The first pillar of this silent transmission is radical self-responsibility. Alara was not waiting for a man to bring her happiness. Her happiness was an inside job. Her art, her sanctuary, her connection to the earth, these were the sources of her vitality. She took radical responsibility for her own emotional and spiritual well-being. What this communicates to a man on a subconscious level is profound. It says, "My happiness is not your job. My wholeness is not your project." This is incredibly liberating for the masculine soul, which has often been conditioned to believe that it is his duty to make a woman happy, an impossible and exhausting task. When he feels that you are already whole, he doesn't have to perform for you. He can relax. He can be authentic. The pressure is off. This creates an immediate space of safety and trust. Practical application. Identify the areas in your life where you are subtly or overtly making someone else responsible for your happiness. Is it a partner, a friend, a family member? Reclaim that power. What is one practice, one hobby, one sacred ritual you can commit to that fills your own cup, that connects you to your own source of joy and vitality, independent of anyone else? It could be painting, dancing, gardening, meditation, time in nature. Make this practice non-negotiable. This is not selfish. It is the most generous thing you can do for all your relationships. By becoming your own source of happiness, You become a fountain, not a drain. The second pillar is the embrace of receptive stillness. Notice that Alara rarely initiated. She did not chase Julian or try to convince him of her worth. She held her space, and he was drawn into her orbit. This is not about being passive or playing games. It is the embodiment of the receptive principle of the universe. The earth does not chase the seed. It offers its rich, fertile darkness, and the seed naturally gravitates towards it to grow. The flower does not chase the bee. It simply opens itself, releases its fragrance, and the bee is irresistibly drawn to its nectar. Receptive stillness is a magnetic power. It communicates a deep trust in life, a trust that what is meant for you will come to you. It shows a man that you are not needy or desperate, that your sense of self-worth is not dependent on his attention. This is incredibly attractive to the healthy masculine. It signals that you are a queen in your own kingdom, and it inspires him to rise to the level of a king to be worthy of entering it. Practical application. Practice the art of non-action. The next time you feel the impulse to text him, to check his social media, to push for a conversation or a commitment, pause, take a deep breath. Turn that anxious energy inward. Place a hand on your heart and ask, what am I truly feeling right now? What is the unmet need beneath this impulse? Often it is a need for security, for validation, for connection. See if you can give that feeling to yourself first. Journal about it, meditate on it, go for a walk. By learning to self-soothe and hold your own center, you transform that nervous, chasing energy into a calm, magnetic presence. You become the flower, trusting that the bee will find you. The third and perhaps most crucial pillar is unconditional positive regard. This was Alara's most profound gift to Julian. She saw him. Beyond the suit, beyond the title, beyond the ego, she saw the soul of the man. She held a space for him that was free of judgment. When he confessed his lie, when he arrogantly tried to fix her art, when he sat in his confusion, she did not criticize or condemn him. She met him with compassion and a quiet, unwavering belief in his inherent goodness. This is what unconditional positive regard looks like. It is the ability to see the divine spark in another, even when their behavior is coming from a place of wounding or fear. This does not mean you condone or accept poor behavior. It means you hold the vision of a man's highest potential, even when he cannot see it for himself. Your silent belief in him becomes a powerful mirror. In your eyes, he sees not who he has been, but who he could be. This loving, non-judgmental reflection is often the single most powerful catalyst for a man's transformation. It gives him the courage to face his own shadows and to do the work required to become the man he was always meant to be. Practical application. The next time you are in a conversation with a man or anyone, practice listening from this space. Set aside your own agenda, your own need to be right, your own judgments. Listen not just to his words, but to the feeling behind the words. Look past the mask he might be wearing and try to connect with the essence of his being. Hold the intention. I see the goodness in you. I see your potential. You don't have to say a word. Just hold this energy in your heart. You will be astonished at how it can transform the dynamic of any interaction. It is a silent prayer that has the power to heal, to uplift, and to awaken. These three pillars, radical self-responsibility, receptive stillness, and unconditional positive regard, are the foundational practices for the conscious woman who wishes to awaken the masculine without saying a word. They are not techniques for manipulation. They are the organic expression of a woman who has done her own inner work. She has journeyed into the depths of her own being and has come home to herself. She has become a living embodiment of the divine feminine, grounded, loving, and free. Her presence alone is a permission slip for a man to do the same. In her, he sees a map back to his own forgotten soul. He sees the possibility of a love that is not a battlefield, but a sanctuary. He sees a partnership that is not about completing each other, but about celebrating each other's wholeness. And this silent vision, this energetic transmission, is more powerful than any words could ever be. It is the language of the soul, and it is the only language that can truly call a king home to his throne. This is the sacred work. This is the path, and it is available to every woman who has the courage to walk it. The journey is not about finding the right man, it is about becoming the right woman. Become her. Become the stillness in the storm. Become the love that heals. Become the silence that speaks volumes. Join our community of conscious creators on this journey. Subscribe to Still Mind, Strong Spirit for more deep dives into spiritual psychology, conscious relationships, and the beautiful, intricate dance of the divine masculine and feminine. Share in the comments below. Which of these three pillars resonates most with you right now? What is one small step you can take today to cultivate that energy in your life? Your story is a vital part of this collective awakening. Let us walk this path together, learning, growing, and transforming not just our relationships, but the world one conscious connection at a time. The power is within you. The time is now. Awaken to your own magnificent, silent strength and watch as the world awakens with you. Remember to engage with the energy of love and allow your awakened heart to guide you on this spiritual growth journey. Your inner peace is your power. Embrace the mindful intimacy that comes from self-worth healing and transform your energy. You are the quiet mythos, the embodiment of a still mind and a strong spirit.